Hey, everybody. I'm so glad to have you here today on another great interview. We have with us Alex Freytag, and he is with ProfitWorks, founder and expert EOS implementer. You can see his little ProfitWorks on his shirt. I'm so excited. And I nerded out a little bit because any manager that worked with me over the last 20 years will remember profit is a big deal in numbers. So Alex is the product of an entrepreneurial household. Alex has spent much of his business experience focused on his passion for being a hero to entrepreneurs. Between selling handmade James Dean t-shirts, need one of those, out of his locker in high school to becoming an expert EOS implementer, he ran or helped run four growing businesses before discovering the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, as it's called. In 2020, during the pandemic, he took time to co-author ProfitWorks, unravel the complexity of incentive plans to increase employee productivity, cultivate an engaged workforce, and maximize your company's potential to help entrepreneurs simplify the topic of incentive plans. Alex currently resides in Columbus, Ohio with his wife and three children. He enjoys traveling, hiking, golfing, scuba diving, and reading for pleasure. So golfing and reading, two of my husband's favorite as well. Not the hiking as much, but he loves his books. Alex, we are so excited to have you here today. Thank you for taking time out of your day.
Thank you.
And bringing your expertise to all of these HR business leaders.
Oh, I'm happy to do it. It's a passion project, and it's ProfitWorks is something that's it's been with me since '96, really in its infancy, and so it's always on my mind, and it's great. So writing the book was actually fun, and I've written another book. So when that comes out, I'd love for it to be featured in your store. But thank you for. So.
Yeah, we look forward to that. My husband gets to have all the fun. I get to the leadership self-development book. I nerd out on that for sure. Alex, many people in our audience, this might be their first exposure to the idea of promoting an earning mindset through business literacy training. Could you give us a brief overview of what this concept entails and why it would be crucial for small businesses and HR leaders?
Yes. So, yeah, the earning mindset, that whole concept is something that sort of evolved out of a fundamental, like a natural law. It's called the Yerkes-Dodson law, if you look it up on Wikipedia. But these two researchers in 1908 developed this relationship between performance and tension, or anxiety. They called it an anxiety. And they found that as tension increases, performance increases up to a point. And what happens is, if you increase that tension too much, think of a rubber band, it gets less effective. And so it's a bell curve, really, if you think about tension on the horizontal x-axis and performance there. And so the left side of that I call entitlement, because there's not much asked of people. There's no tension. The rubber band's kind of flopsy, sitting there, not really doing anything performance wise. And a lot of businesses and organizations are in that mode where they're not really asking much of their folks. Come in, punch a clock, do your job, go home, kind of thing. And so I get to work with businesses and entrepreneurs that want to add more tension, and that moves employees. It can feel uncomfortable, but it moves employees into this sort of earning mode where they're thinking more about, how can we do that? Let's shoot for the big one, and let's really go for it. And how do we solve this problem? And there's healthy conflict and so forth. So it's a top of the bell curve kind of stuff. So from entitlement mentality to earning mentalities is what the philosophy of ProfitWorks is, but not going too far. And there's an art form to helping leaders sort of stay in the middle of that bell curve without going into what I call fear, that third zone: entitlement, earning, and fear. We want to have employees and everyone, leaders, living in the earning zone in the middle of that bell curve. So there's higher expectations of performance that are stated to the employees. So hopefully that gives some context.
Yes, I love that. And I can't imagine a business owner out there asking, I really don't want to motivate my team anymore today. Thank you very much. Everybody can use that tension.
Yeah. But it's frightening though, Elena. One thing is when, and over the decades, a lot of businesses have been just sort of, it's easy to stay in the comfortable sort of entitlement zone and just pay the people, and they come into work and they show up and they do the job. And so it takes some risk for leaders to say, you know what, I'm gonna lay down, some goals here and some performance requirements for this job, and that, because I don't want people to leave. They'll say, well, just, you never mind, we won't measure that, and we won't discuss that, because I don't want to freak you out and cause you to leave the business. So it's really, it takes courage to introduce tension, and to stick with it. So
thank you for that. Yeah, because I see that fear show up a lot, especially in the market right now, where it's hard to find talent. And we heard that a lot during that COVID time, when people couldn't find people to work. It was
and you couldn't see people, so you couldn't really measure whether are they working like they said they were, or are they doing yoga class or whatever during all that kind of stuff is and the so measurement, and I think really people who love accountability and love the challenge of pushing past a goal, those types of folks really do like things that are being measured, and to know where they stand in relation to the goals and so forth, and those are the folks you're trying to look for, is the people who really want it, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. In the context of small business, how does fostering an earning mindset among employees directly translate to an overall business growth and profitability? Because every business, I've never heard a business say, I don't need more profit. So how can this education help that?
Well, it's a little bit, I guess the way to think about it is, we use the term accountability chart in EOS. It's sort of like an org chart on steroids, right? It's got specific roles that are clearly stated expectations. And historically, a lot of the information about company performance and measurements and scorecards and so forth is in one or a handful of leaders, and that's where it stays. And so folks are kept in the dark, and not a lot of information is shared with them. And the opportunity that's missed there becomes clear when you switch that and you start to shine the light throughout the whole company, you start to share expectations, also goals, some financial information, which can be considered kind of the score at the end of the game if you're sharing an income statement or a cash flow statement. And starting to enroll the employees, are a couple of consequences of that, which are generally very positive. One is the employees appreciate knowing how the game is being played and how the score is kept. Number two is they see things that they'd love to see done better, like whether it's a process that needs to be documented, or something's missing, or something's confusing, or something's broken. They can start to contribute ideas that they've got a lot of untapped potential, and the businesses that kind of feel that and see that about their people have a real advantage to having a lot more brains working on the problem than just a leader. And so it has a really positive ripple effect. It takes time and commitment, but boy, the payoff down the road is fantastic. And there's more to that, but I'll not explain right now. So.
We'll probably get a little more. I mean, engagement and ownership is a big piece of that in any organization.
Yeah.
We have a lot of HR leaders, and one of the things that everybody has is this performance management, this development, professional development, business literacy, right? Which people don't know. And some business owners, they have to figure that out on their own.
Yeah.
How can how does it differ from traditional professional development? And what can they use because professional development helps us all for sure.
It really does. Well, you and I were sort of talking about this prior, is that a lot of times, because somebody's on a leadership team, we assume they understand business and finance and so forth. And some folks are, promoted into those from other business positions where they haven't really had exposure to it. And they often in meetings might just feel like they're the imposter syndrome, and they're faking it, and they don't what's gross margin? Why is it gross? And so forth. And so they don't speak the language, and they kind of fake it till they make it. And so to the degree, from a professional development standpoint, part of a leader's role is to understand how business works, so that they can cascade that, they can teach that to the folks who report to them, and groom those leaders so that as they elevate, they're really delegating a sort of knowledge to these up and coming leaders to help them become more business literate and be able to tackle projects and look at labor inefficiencies and waste on this project versus material usage on that, and start to look at gross margin if that's, an appropriate measurable in that business. But that type of thinking, I think, is very much professional development, and it helps them to be more actively contributing to the company's financial performance. And so when we teach employees about all the different facets of the business, they become active contributors to its success as well, which can lead to that incentive plan that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tension tools. So you have this, you have tension tools. It's with your ProfitWorks.
Yes.
It intrigues a lot because tension, most people don't like the word tension. That can stress some people out. Can you elaborate on what the tools are and how can they be implemented effectively in a workplace to really enhance that employee understanding and drive?
Sure. Yeah, that's great. The term tension tools came out of that curve that we talked about, the sort of as you add tension to a point. And the tools are fairly simple, and they've been around 100 years, and they'll probably be around for 1,000 more. But they are a tension tool would be something like a scorecard in a department where they're measuring, week to week, 3 or 4 key measurables, numbers that are really important for them to be moving in the right direction. And they look at that over a period of weeks, and they start to see trends in the data. That scorecard itself can add a little bit of tension, but then you put somebody's name associated with the measurable. So Miguel owns, scrap, and Marty owns, on-time delivery. And so when somebody sees their name on a scorecard, they feel a little bit of pressure, a little bit of tension, and that's not a bad thing. We're just asking them to report on it, and if it's off track, we're going to drop it down and really talk about it, and see if we can figure out what the issue is. So a scorecard and measurables are tension tools. There are in EOS, there are things called rocks. In the book ProfitWorks, we talk about challenge rocks. So gamifying a rock. A rock is a 90-day priority, essentially. And so from a tension tool standpoint, a challenge rock, which is celebrating a win on a rock, or just a rock, is a method of helping a leader or somebody stay very focused on a sort of an on the business priority while they're still working in the business. And so there's a bit of tension there. They have to allocate their time to it week in and week out. They have to stay on track with it. They can't procrastinate getting it done. So it becomes a really powerful tension tool in the business as well. Core values. We teach businesses how to discover their core values, and then how to hire, fire, review, reward, and recognize people around core values, which are essentially guiding principles that emanate from the leaders and the leadership team. And so core values become a tension tool for a leader to hold their teams accountable to living and breathing those core values. And there are many others, but it's an element of an expectation of performance that's clearly stated up front, and then delivered on week in, week out, for a month in, month out, over time, so that people feel like, okay, that's the way this culture is in this company. We measure things. We expect people to do what they say. If something's due next Tuesday, we get it done by next Tuesday, and we follow through. And if we don't, we know somebody's going to be calling us on it. And that's the tension that we're talking about here. And it creates a culture where people really appreciate getting things predictably. And so you move forward a lot faster as an organization. You've got alignment. You've got everybody kind of rowing like in time. If you picture a group of folks on a boat, there's a lot of metaphors for that. But it's right people in the right seat, and then having the right measurables and the right sort of amount of tension that gives them information about immediate feedback on whether they're doing it right or needs a little work, and putting all of that in alignment with a bigger vision for the organization of where the company wants to go, which is tension as well. If we set a BHAG, the Jim Collins term, the big, hairy, audacious goal, it's like that North Star that's 10 years out, and we want to be, a $50 million company or whatever it is. That's tension, and it pulls you to the future. And so getting the leadership team to come to alignment on that is very powerful, and then giving everybody in the organization tools so they can be active participants in helping the organization achieve its vision it's fun. It's a fun place to work.
I would love to hear an example of a success story of implementation, because again, I was in corporate for quite a few years. I'm envisioning my personal experiences and how this would have been nice to have before the pandemic.
Oh yeah, right.
But we would love to hear just in a success story. What have you seen? And
Yeah, there are quite a few. A couple that come to mind were around. So, for example, there was an office furniture distributor, and they have damaged furniture often that comes in from the vendor. And if they don't get back to the vendor with these itemized reports in enough time, they kind of lose out on that opportunity to exchange it or to get credit for it. And
right.
So this idea came up from sort of the training that the company was doing around the employees. They'd set up an incentive plan. They'd said to the employees, now where's all the money kind of, falling through the cracks here? And they got them into small groups. And one of the ideas that came up was, well, we could probably get credit from our vendors on damaged furniture. And so they did some work on the math and figured out that in a year, it's about $250,000 over all these different variety of vendors that some of it they were recouping, but others from a process standpoint, they were just behind and they didn't get it back in time. So they tightened up the process and were able to find that money and get that recouped. And it's through deeper conversation on those different measurables. Another example was a company that paves like parking lots and so forth, and oftentimes they might pave over a manhole or something that
Yeah.
it's rework, and the employees kind of thought, well, that's not rework, it's just taking care of the customer's always right. And so if they have to go back, though, they've got all the equipment and all the labor, the opportunity cost of not working on another project. So getting them into a conversation about the various costs associated with doing it wrong the first time help them start to say, oh, we can fix that and get more tuned into our checklist before and so forth. And they were able to set up very simple processes to eliminate the rework and or at least reduce it. And again, it's helping the employees become active, sort of actively participating and looking at the business with the lens of an owner instead of just like I just have a job here, and they appreciate it too, which is
yeah.
so. There are many other some web companies where they're increasing leads from the website and helping the employees kind of start to cross sell different products and services, and so the measurables are all across the board, but it's fun to get them into a conversation where they're brainstorming on that, and they see all the ideas sort of on a flip chart or on a whiteboard of all the different ways that they can drop money to the bottom line.
I loved some of my favorite days. I would have an employee come up to me and they would, did you know that we're losing this much money here? I'm like, well, tell me about it. What's going on? And it changes there's trust that comes with that. And I know I've heard some things you talk about trust and this builds trust and helps with trust. But so there's a couple things to this. One is love to talk about how this can help build trust, but then also I do want to hit on the incentive programs and how this can help benefit and really get back to your staff, which shows again this human side, this that you care.
No, it's great. There's a bit of psychology, I suppose, in this, but there's in the book we talk about this spectrum or continuum. We call it the transparency continuum, and to simplify it, the three sort of zones are like closed book, open book, and radical transparency at the far end. And from a trust standpoint, if you don't share any information with people, you've got sort of this wall up, and it's very difficult to reduce the wall and become more trusting of each other because there's this barrier there. And so as you start to share more information, there's a level of appreciation, and it's done over time. So this is like quarters and months and years and so forth. You start to share more information. There's an appreciation for it's vulnerable that the leaders are doing this. They're saying, hey, this is the score, this is how this works. And so it's kind of like behind the curtain. So there's an element of trust there. Like I have the inside scoop as an employee on how this company makes money. and I'm not going to abuse it. So there's a two-way thing there. And I tell business owners that if there's something that would damage the company if it got out, don't share that. Obviously, that's kind of gets into radical transparency, where
Right.
I've met a handful of companies that share like salaries, and so I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about like share the stuff the employees need to know to make better decisions.
Right.
So there's a balance there. I kind of put the bell curve on top of that, saying higher levels of performance with a little bit of open book there to create that higher level of trust. Mm-hmm. From a trust standpoint, when people have been living in entitlement and they higher expectations of performance are laid on them, like scorecards and quarterly goals and so forth like that, they might run over to fear because they're like, I can't hide anymore. They're measuring everything.
Right.
A lot of movies portray characters like this.
Yep.
And so some leave, which is maybe fine, and others start to realize, okay, well, there's nothing really to fear. They're starting to measure more and sharing more information. So from a trust standpoint, to move from fear up to the earning, which can be gradual for some, they start to realize there's nothing to be afraid of here. I'm not going to get yelled at. They're not going to shoot the messenger. I can say, hey, this is a problem without getting yelled at, and we'll just have an adult conversation about it. And so the adult agreement becomes a very important tool to allow employees to feel comfortable saying it, and that builds trust there. Where I feel like they've got my back, and I'm not going to get yelled at or stabbed in the back kind of thing if I say that something's wrong or something's broken. So there are a lot of elements to that. So transparency, I think, creates trust. And you can even take this into a household, right? When you've got young kids, you don't share nearly as much as when you're trying to prepare them for that financial freedom. You start sharing more information, and hopefully we've armed them with enough knowledge to be able to take good care of themselves in their personal lives as well.
I love that. And you talked about trust and this trust of being able to, you're not using a scorecard as a gotcha, but actually using it to continue. But I also think there's this level of, they start to trust the organization that they have their best interest at heart because they're actually going to take feedback, right? When there's a scorecard, not only are you measured, but the organization is measured, and you have a way to communicate in language that now your leaders can understand. You learn the new language, right? Oh, this is what they're looking at and measuring. Okay, I can step back. Let me show you it could be things that you've been asking to change for years, that all of a sudden now you have this whole new way to communicate that in a way that you might be heard quicker or actions will be taken sooner. I think that's a great way to continue to build trust and engagement.
I love that. Yeah. And Patrick Lencioni is an author. You probably have heard of Five Dysfunctions of Teams, his famous book, but he's got another book called The Truth About Employee Engagement. He originally titled it The Three Signs of a Miserable Job. And in there, he's got some made up words, but essentially picture a triangle. It's irrelevance is a sign of a miserable job. I don't know why I'm doing this work. I don't have a sense of like purpose. It's, I just punch the clock kind of thing. Immeasurability is a made up word or immeasurement. But I don't know, like if I go home at night, did I have a good day or a bad day? I don't know, because nothing's measured to your point about scorecards. And then anonymity is the last sign of a miserable job. And that's like, I'm just a butt in a seat. Nobody cares about me. Nobody knows about me. So a lot of what we're trying to bring in is healthy trust building activities or tools that help teams of employees know each other better. And when you know each other better, you have this vulnerability based trust that allows you to get into healthy conflict without personal attacks. So you're attacking, like you said, like the business issue versus like me. And together we can solve the business issue. But once it starts getting personal, we got to like pull back from that. So anyway,
go to your corners.
Yeah, go to your corner. Yeah, well, let's take a timeout and we'll pick this up tomorrow. That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love is that this is new too. Well, not new, but a lot of organizations, just because it's hard to hire, retain, but a lot of people are looking for bonuses. What does that look like? And organizations want to. Most of the people that I've worked with, organizations have had this intention of being they want to give back. So tell me how this can help and how you can kind of partner that with an incentive program so that your staff gets paid when they're business savvy.
That's
essentially.
great. Yeah, and it's interesting how it came about, because the initial idea my brother and I started in 1996, a long time ago, was that if we teach people sort of to understand the business, they can drive numbers in a way that positively affects the company. And now,
Mhm.
when that happens, you certainly improve job security, you improve opportunities for growth, reinvestments in technology and tools and training and all that good stuff. Um, but it also creates this pile of money that maybe the company never had before. And so, to your point, a lot of entrepreneurs are really eager to return some of that back to the folks who helped make the change. And so, in the book, we talk about sort of some formulas, recognizing there's not a silver bullet on this.
Right.
Incentive plans are very tricky, but we're dealing with humans, and and all humans don't respond to the same incentives in the same way. But to the degree that the company can establish a threshold or a trigger of profit, we talk about, that protects the company. Number one, because the company has to be protected from the standpoint of just providing jobs.
Right. Yeah.
Can't just evacuate it with
Absolutely.
profit sharing. And I usually put these things in four buckets, but return on investment to the people taking all the risk. So entrepreneurs take risks. It doesn't feel like they're taking risks. They just believe so thoroughly in the idea,
Hmm.
like opening a bookstore or something like that, and they're
Yeah.
passionate about it. And but there's a risk return equation that is very real in our society, and I think it's very fair to teach people that. There's the low risk generally has low returns, and higher risk there's no guarantee, but
Right.
typically higher returns associated with that. And there's examples of that throughout, but that risk return equation, the return on investment, is one of the four sort of elements that goes into that trigger discussion. Uh, Obligations of any debt that the company might have, taxes, and then reinvestment in the business. And those four elements help, and we coach entrepreneurs through this, but help them establish a trigger that protects the company. And then X% of anything above that trigger, and then each year you might change that trigger or the percentage above the trigger that you're sharing, and you create this pool of incremental profit dollars. That's why we call it self-funded. So we want, from a tension standpoint, we want the profit trigger to be a form of tension. It's not a sure thing. If you don't hit the trigger, there's no payout. But if we get a little bit above it, there's a little bit of payout, and then so forth. So you can so we talk a lot about that in the book, like how to establish the trigger and then how to pay it out. Like you get this big pool of money and you have 100 employees, who gets what, and just some ideas around that. And again, we're coaching, not saying this is the only way to do it, but
Mhm.
it does seem to work if we help the entrepreneur understand how to keep it really simple. So it's easy to explain, it's easy to understand, and then you're going to give these employees all these tools like scorecards and tension tools, things we talked about. They can find the money to fund the plan, so it's self-funded. And that becomes kind of a cultural vibe that's the way the business runs. It's like, hey, we share information and we have high expectations of performance, like profit triggers and so forth, and we reward people really well here. And so when we surpass our goals, we're all going to make a little bit more money. So that's the bare bones of it, I suppose.
Right. I love follow-up question on that is,
Yeah.
how often do you reassess, right? Like, so I'm thinking big corporation, they have their tension, they know what their goals are and when you get paid out in a more of a bonus. But we have a lot of small business owners. So what could that look like for more of a smaller business, that they get to have some flexibility with that as their
Yeah.
business changes? Or is there flexibility when their business starts to change and shift and adjust?
No, that's a great question. And typically we look at sort of the game in a year. And it's not
Okay.
necessarily just paid out in a year. It might be paid out quarterly, but usually with a holdback. I do talk about that in the book. But let's say you're on a calendar year with your small business and you have 50 employees, and you kick off the plan in January and you say we're going to reevaluate after every quarter. March 31st comes by, you've surpassed your trigger, you calculate the percentage, you bank maybe half of it and pay out half of it. Help everybody understand what the score is, how we're doing, where are we going. So past, present, future, kind of share the state of the company, and then you go through June and you do the same thing, and through September and so forth. And then at the end of the year, you kind of true it all up. So anything that was banked, you have to have covered that, but you pay it out. So you keep everybody's head in the game throughout. And so quarterly payouts are common, and but not the entire quarter, because if you pay out 100%, 100%, 100%, and then the company starts to tank, you don't want to, you can't get that back, obviously. So
Right. Oh, yeah.
in the company, but you keep everybody's head in the game. And then paired with that, and like you said, some businesses have incentive plans and that work, and that's awesome. The key for an incentive plan is it should shape behavior. It should manage that human energy. It should direct it in the right way to look for inefficiencies, waste, opportunities for growth. We can't cut our way to growth, right? So not just cutting costs, but it might be joint ventures or additional products or services or add-on sales or those kind of things to help the company grow profitably as well. And so the incentive plan is not, it's just one tool. And if you have an incentive plan that's working, it might be that if it's not really shaping behavior, it's more like an entitlement. You're just handing it out every year or every quarter. You might want to bolster that with some business literacy, education. And so that's a piece where we can come in and help. We have an online masterclass that people can sign up for, and it gives you all this content, like a library of PowerPoints and videos that you can watch to help your leaders teach this stuff more effectively in the business, to tie the incentive plan to the employees' daily activities more directly. We call it profit link, linking their efforts to the company's profitability. So it's possible to that you do have a great plan, but you just want to get your employees more like tuned into it with tools. So
great. And I, as a kind of a spinoff too, is nonprofits, right? So we have this whole world of nonprofits where there's this nonprofits can't make money. They're very limited. And I come from a business mindset, and I've been working, I actually have a nonprofit, and I'm working with nonprofits, and I think there's a lot of great business skills to use to continue to develop your nonprofit so that you can do more good. I'm curious how ProfitWorks can be tailored, or I'm assuming you already have it adjusted for nonprofits where they can then continue to fund their mission.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as we were talking about before, that no margin, no mission is an important kind of statement there. And although we might call it excess revenues over expenses instead of profit, the rainy day fund, the piece that protects the organization's long-term prospects really has to be strong. The balance sheet has to be strong. So the financial statements are all there. The conversation with the folks who work at the organization might be a bit different, because a lot of folks work for nonprofits for something other than the money, right? And they're there because they really believe in the mission. They're very purpose driven, which is absolutely fantastic. So tying it in and perhaps capping the incentive plan, making it enough, or maybe it's a company-wide celebration. We surpassed our goals, or we helped this many folks that we're trying to support and so forth. So the measurables might be less financial and more related to the impact that they're having. The celebration might be less of a profit sharing plan and more of a company-wide kind of cultural event. Maybe get a band and a barbecue and that kind of thing, and have some fun with it, and recognize we're, instead of paying out a bunch of cash to people, we're going to really focus on doing this good deed. And so there are 1,000 ways to play it. Again, if you at the 30,000 foot level, and keep in mind that we're trying to understand if this plan is really shaping human energy and directing it where we want it to, and we want to direct it in a nonprofit to the mission, then we want to make sure that we've got our eyes on that when we're designing the plan simply. So hopefully that's helpful. It really is rewarding either way. We talk in the book, you may remember, about challenge rocks, and in a nonprofit, oftentimes the challenge rocks are the fun part, the quarter to quarter, where you say, if we get this measurable from X to Y, or we get this many new donors in the next 90 days, we're going to go out and have this this celebration, and so it's less focused on the finance and the money.
I think that's important and impactful, because it's, again, we need our nonprofits out there doing some of this work that other places they can't do it. I'm a huge proponent of, you can run it. So that's great. I think that's amazing.
Thank you.
Every organization has its unique challenges and workforce dynamics. How can HR leaders customize the approach to business literacy and attention tools to fit their specific needs? Because I'm sure you've had just an abundance of examples, but
Well, yeah, and you're talking about tailoring the different tools for them for each company.
Mm-hmm.
The you'll probably have this experience, but every company has different measurables they're looking at. And I'll work with an organization that's in like mortgage lending, and they'll say, well, what do most mortgage lending companies use for their scorecard? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's what do we need? What do we need
Right.
to focus on? And so I do facilitate conversations with the leadership team to start to get their juices flowing in their brains and whiteboard a bunch of ideas for things that if they were stuck on an island for with no access to technology or the team, but every week a scorecard showed up, what would they, what are the 5 to 15 measurables they'd want to see on that to make sure that the organization is really on track? And so they kind of brainstorm a little bit, and we whiteboard it and keep, kill, combine, and get down to 10 or 12 different measurables for that organization. There's usually based on new business from existing, new business from new, doing it efficiently and serving our customers profitably, making sure we have enough cash, and make sure everybody's happy. So there's sort of a cultural element there, and you can kind of see, from cash and a profit standpoint and a people standpoint, there's usually some measurables associated in there. So it's very tailored to that organization. We have when we start with a client, we share a spreadsheet that asks for some historical financial information. So for 4, 5, 6 years of historical financial information, we can really create some cool charts. And when you're teaching employees about business, it's much easier to learn and see trends in the data when you're looking at charts than it is to look at like spreadsheets and so forth. So those are very tailored as well for the organizations. Generally not pie charts, but like bar graphs showing like gross margin over the year, gross margin and revenue, and are they separating or staying together, and so forth. And looking for any opportunities in some of that data will help tailor the conversation to where the business might want to focus. So there's a couple of examples, but it's a lot of fun because every business that we get to work with is different, and we get to be very creative with that. So.
I bet I can just picture that would be a lot of fun and enjoyable. A lot of people are like, why are we talking about, because this is an HR summit and we're talking about HR, and
yeah.
I'm curious if you're an HR leader here and we're talking about your job is to take this back and how this can benefit the organization. I'm curious your thoughts on why HR should care
Yeah.
and how they can take this back to the decision makers, right? So it may not be them, it may be somebody else, but how can they take that back to positively impact?
Yeah, I mean, it's the net is around employee retention and culture. Now the culture you want to retain, of course, you want it to be right people in the right seats. Mm-hmm. So there's an element of attracting people who really do share your core values. So from a standpoint of an HR standpoint of recruiting for core values alignment first, and then looking at the seat and saying, is there a good fit here? Do they have the skills and the experience they need to fill this seat adequately? But when you fill the organization with core values aligned, like go-getters that are 100% clear on what their roles and expectations are of their seats, that from an HR perspective, so critical on the front side, the tip of the spear, getting people in the organization. Let's say you have great people. How are we doing performance management? And so within the organization, in EOS, we teach quarterly conversations, for example, where the boss, it's not a review, just a conversation, right. It's working with someone. But around those conversations, you're getting into the tension tools like measurables for that seat. And is the person exceeding or behind, or do they need help? They need training, they need coaching, they need a mentor. So these elements of development of our folks really become hugely associated with human resources, or the seat that I call the people seat, which is so critical around hiring, attracting, retaining, and sometimes on the termination side as well. My book talks a bit about wrong people in the right seat. So you've got these superstars that are just kicking butt on their numbers, but they are toxic to the culture. Mm-hmm. And from an HR perspective, trying to figure out if those people can flip to become aligned with our values, or if they need to go. because toxic people will cause really good people to leave as well.
Yeah.
And so there's a very strong people and culture element to everything we're talking about. The incentive plan stuff is just another tool. It's certainly the one that's kind of like attractive and shiny to people because it's like everybody
Right.
frustrated with it and it's very complex. But I don't think that's the primary focus. I think it is getting a team of employees who really share the vision and they know what they need to do to participate in helping the company achieve its vision. So hopefully that's helpful. I would encourage companies. I have these books here, but one book is Traction. This Gino Wickman. That's going to be an EOS deep dive. Read that and then take it to the leadership team if you love it. And then go on to eosworldwide.com and check that out. And then, of course, this one, which I think brought us together, Elena, is the book ProfitWorks about incentive plans and business literacy and most of the information we've been talking about today. So read those. I think did we set up a little like website, like a landing page for?
Yeah, I think you guys have a website and a landing page. I'm super excited about that. There's a freebie of the, I'm hopefully I'm saying this right. A download of the first chapter of your book, plus a handout of your 6 incentive plan mistakes and and then the positive tension curve graph, which I think if everybody here needs to download it, because I'm telling you, 20 plus years, I was actually talking to a client, and I'm an HR business consultant, and we were talking about specifically performance management.
Yeah.
But there's no metrics. There's nothing to measure in performance management, and you're gonna get what you put into that, which is if you're not measuring metrics, you're not going to see that improvement. And so I just love this idea of giving back to your employees and really trusting them with the information, right? So you're giving them trust and being vulnerable, where not all companies can. And so I would love to hear just any key takeaways, anything that you think everybody, whether they're HR, leadership, someone who's thinking about starting a business and isn't sure, what information would you impart to them?
Well, they're the 3 things that I would impart around perhaps just the ProfitWorks side of things is as it relates to incentive plans is simple. Number one, just keep it simple, strive for simplicity, knowing that number one, it's going to be easier to administer, and then it's going to be easier to explain, and then it doesn't feel like you're hiding anything and so forth. So strive for simplicity, like one number, instead of trying to have measurables throughout and incentives throughout, and this department has this and so forth. And so avoiding that complexity and striving for simplicity is one. The second one is self-funded. Self-funded meaning the incentive plan is not an expense. It's something that pays for itself because you've got changed behavior in these sort of business literate ownership kind of thinking employees. And the supported piece is the third piece. So simple, self-funded, supported, 3 S's. Supported means you're really committed to it. You're mentally committed long-term for sharing information, keeping people up to speed, giving them tools and training and so forth to help them stay tuned into the game that you're playing as a business owner or as a business leader. And so those are probably the 3 important ones on the ProfitWorks side. And then on the other side, it's probably similar to what I mentioned with the Patrick Lencioni book, the Truth About Employee Engagement, is establish a vision for the organization with the leadership team, get an alignment on it, get an agreement on it, have a vision that you all agree on at the leadership team level, and then share that vision with the workforce. And in combination with the tools you've given them, help them understand how everything they do either contributes to or detracts from us or our ability to achieve that vision. And so use tools that allow them to measure elements and then build on team health to increase trust so that you can really attack issues with healthy sort of discussion, healthy debate, and people understand that conflict is okay as long as it's not disrespectful. So those are a couple of important things too. Hopefully that's helpful.
Alex, thank you so much. This has been such a treat for us to have you here in my own personal leadership journey, as well as I'm sure everybody else that's out there. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here and imparting your phenomenal knowledge of years of experience. And if you guys you want to go follow him, LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn, all the social medias, check them all out. And then also their website. And if you have an organization that you really want to get people moving in that right direction that help continue to benefit your organization, definitely need to check this out. read it, and then hand it to the next person that needs to hear it in your organization, and then start the conversation.
Love it. Thank you, Elena. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.